You're not dying. Although, in a way, from the moment of birth, we all begin to die.
But we can't begin to understand why you insist on our coming here.
That's a management issue, Queen.
Past sessions, you have reported a fear of death, a fear of life, a fear of open spaces, a fear of closed spaces, a fear of people, a fear of...
I made it just for you.
Is that...
Terry Gilliam's The Zero Theorem is a masterclass in pretentiousness and his worst movie. You know, sometimes directors make masterpieces that shape the cinematic landscape, and then there are times when those same directors craft films that are so convoluted they feel like an art school project gone horribly wrong. Enter The Zero Theorem, where Terry Gilliam, the man behind brilliant works like Brazil and 12 Monkeys, trades in his genius card for something that looks suspiciously like a midlife crisis on film. If you enjoy philosophical ramblings mixed with a colour palette that could trigger migraines, this one's for you. For the rest of us, it's 107 minutes of watching a man try to solve life's mysteries, only to discover that, shocker, life has no point, a bit like this film. This is Gilliam's brilliant idea. What exactly possessed him to greenlight the Zero Theorem? Perhaps he had one too many late-night musings about the futility of existence and decided, hey, let's throw that on screen, but make it more neon and like a dystopian rave. Writers Pat Rushin and Gilliam cooked up a screenplay that reads like a philosophy student's wet dream. What if a man solved the meaning of life only to find out there wasn't one? Riveting, right? If it sounds like something we've seen before, that's because we have. But don't worry, this time Gilliam gives it a nice little coat of neon paint and sprinkles in enough visual noise to make sure you don't notice the complete lack of substance. Was this a production or madness? And can anyone tell the difference? Filming The Zero Theorem must have felt like being trapped inside a neon whirlwind of Gilliam's unchecked impulses, with no escape in sight. Picture the production meetings. Let's make it colourful, says one, and confusing, says another, and throw in some flashing lights so people think it's artistic, says a third. If I'd been a fly on the wall, I imagine the conversation about the Zero Theorem would be less about making a coherent film and more about seeing just how much visual chaos you can cram into a single frame. The result is a set design that's part cyberpunk dystopia, part Willy Wonka's factory, if Willy had gone off his meds. And the aesthetic choices? Well, if Terry Gilliam wanted to punish us for loving his earlier work, he certainly found a way to do it. As for the special effects, they're certainly an effect all right. What happens when you combine bad CGI and half-hearted practical effects? A visual mess that makes even the cheapest PlayStation 2 game look good. For a director famous for his effects, here Gilliam seems to have said, let's half-arse a lot of it. The CGI? It's like they borrowed an old copy of The Sims, threw in a few extra pixels and called it a day. The practical effects don't fare much better. Cohen's bathtub of anguish, because why wouldn't a bold guy have a massive tub for his emotional breakdowns, is comically oversized, and the rest of the film's world feels like a caricature of dystopian aesthetics. Lots of flashing screens, plenty of wires, and absolutely zero logic. The virtual reality scenes are a practical special form of torture, looking like they were rendered on someone's home PC in the early 2000s. It's 2013, Terry. Get it together. When the soundtrack tries too hard, all you get is synths and screeches. So if you thought the visuals were over the top, wait until you hear the soundtrack trying to convince you to feel something. Anything? One might hope the sound design could help ground the madness, but alas, no. George Fenton's score is as heavy-handed as it gets, using synths to punctuate each dramatic moment as though trying to tell us, this is important, feel things now. Unfortunately, it comes off like someone mashing a keyboard in a failed attempt to write a score. The music overwhelms without adding anything. Thinking a film about existential angst, the score would evoke subtle despair. Instead, it feels like Fenton was aiming for epic, but accidentally landed somewhere between irritating and forgettable. So is there a plot, or is it all pointless? Well, I'll let you decide. So here we have a man searching for the meaning of life through maths, only to discover there's none. Deep, maybe. Tiresome, definitely.
Why would you want to prove that all is for nothing?
The plot, or what passes for one. The Zero Theorem centres on Cohen Leth, Christoph Waltz, a man who spends most of his time staring at screens, plugging away at a mathematical formula that's supposed to reveal the meaning of life. Cohen believes that once he cracks this formula, he'll finally get that phone call he's been waiting for, because naturally the answers to life, the universe and everything will be delivered via telecom. His work for an Orwellian megacorporation under the mysterious figure of management played by a wig-wearing Matt Damon, because, of course, takes him down a rabbit hole of angst and dread. What's the big reveal? Well, turns out there is no meaning. Life is pointless. Yep, that's what you've been waiting for. Cohen's entire journey is about finding purpose. He's left with the cosmic equivalent of a shrug and a meh meme. Who needs answers when you've got futility, right? We spend 2 hours following Cohen, who has the emotional range of a soggy sponge, only to be handed a nihilistic fortune cookie. This is a great cast wasted on a bad idea. Waltz, Thierry, Damon and Swinton all give it their best shot. Unfortunately, their best can't save a sinking ship. Christopher Waltz is a gem of an actor, and I can only assume he took this role as some part of experimental art piece. Either that or Gilliam has dirt on him. Waltz plays Cohen, a socially awkward, agoraphobic man who spends his time muttering about life's lack of meaning. There's no charisma, no connection, just a guy in an oversized housecoat who looks like he's in the middle of a depressive episode.
No, we fear a great many things, but we fear nothing most of all. At present, there's very little we can think of that brings us joy. At present, we feel no joy.
What do you feel?
Nothing.
Then there's Melanie Thierry playing Bainsley, a virtual reality sex worker, because subtlety is overrated, who tries to seduce Cohen with, you guessed it, virtual sunshine and palm trees. Her character is paper-thin and exists solely to remind us that even in Dystopia, there'll always be a manic pixie dream girl to throw into the mix.
You don't know me and I don't know you. Care to come to my place? That's the best line I've heard all night.
And Matt Damon, oh Matt, can only imagine the phone call that got him into this project. Sporting an array of ridiculous wigs, Damon plays management, the guy running the show behind the scenes. But it's hard to take him seriously when he looks like he stepped out of a fancy dress party. His presence in the film is baffling, less a villain, more like a walking distraction.
Chaos encapsulated. That's all there is at the end.
I never said all is for nothing. I'm a businessman, Mr. Leth. Nothing is for nothing. There's money in ordering disorder. Chaos pays, Mr. Leth.
I'm sorry, but I no longer require your services.
Lastly, we've got Tilda Swinton as Dr. Shrinkrom, a virtual therapist with an accent so painful you can practically hear her tripping over the syllables. Her character exists purely to spout philosophical nonsense at Cohen, because every nightmare needs a quirky therapist, apparently.
Bob's a genius, whisked superbrain. Up and listen. Yo, you cannot, we will not help you, not at all, until you first shed verbal trust. First person plural.
If you want a nihilistic lecture, you're better off just reading Nietzsche. The deep themes of this film are a cinematic car crash, because the Zero Theorem thinks it's about big ideas. Corporate control, the search for meaning, the isolation of modern life. But in reality, it's more like watching a pretentious grad drone on about existentialism after one too many beers. The answer to the film's central question, what is the meaning of life, is about as revelatory as discovering that water is wet. Gilliam tries to dress it up with some flashy visuals, but no amount of neon lights can disguise the fact that this exploration of purpose is little more than nihilism dressed in a clown suit. The idea that technology isolates us is floated for all of 5 minutes before being abandoned in favour of a trip to a virtual paradise with Bainsley, and the whole concept of corporate control is overshadowed by Damon's bad wigs. Sure, there's a critique in there somewhere about capitalism crushing the soul, but it's buried under so much philosophical waffle that you need an excavator with a hydraulic breaker attachment to unearth it. The film doesn't so much explore its themes as hurl them at you in a chaotic mess of dialogue and visuals, hoping you'll be too distracted to notice the lack of actual substance. It was crickets at the box office, so people do have some taste after all. Shockingly, audiences didn't flock to cinemas for this colourful existential slog. The critical reception was lukewarm at best, with many attempting to justify the film's incoherence as ambitious or thought-provoking. Bless their souls. As for the box office, well, let's just say the Zero Theorem didn't exactly have audiences lining up for repeat viewings. Gilliam may have once been a director whose name alone could sell tickets, but here it seems even his die-hard fans found themselves asking, what the hell did I just watch? So will the Zero Theorem leave a lasting legacy? Only in the sense that it serves as a cautionary tale for directors getting too lost in their own weirdness. There won't be any fervent midnight screenings of this one, nor will it find itself enshrined as a cult classic like Brazil. At best it'll gather dust in the DVD bargain bin. Its influence? Well, it might serve as a good lesson for film students on how not to handle themes of existentialism. Beyond that, the Zero Theorem will be largely forgotten. So was this the missing piece of Gilliam's dystopian puzzle? Well, it's not even close. This is what happens when a brilliant filmmaker indulges in his most pretentious tendencies, without anyone around to rein him in. The result is a jumbled mess of visuals, pseudo-philosophical babble.
Everybody thought neutrinos had no mass, and one day somebody discovered actually they do have mass. Tiny little bit of mass. Well, that's the kind of stuff that used to keep me awake at night. You ever get a feeling the whole world's giggling behind your back? That everybody in the entire universe is in on some big, fat, cosmic joke. The reason you're not laughing is because you're the punchline. Do you ever get a feeling, Quid?
And squandered talent. It's a film that presents itself as an exploration of life's biggest questions, but ends up offering less substance than a motivational poster in an office break room. For those who enjoy cinematic experiences that want to experience a trauma-inducing visual migraine brought on by too much caffeine and existential dread, this might just be up your alley. Everyone else? You're better off revisiting Gilliam's earlier works that actually understood the balance between style and substance. So for anyone who thought this film would neatly round out Gilliam's so-called dystopian triptych, which includes the brilliant Brazil and the time-bending 12 Monkeys, prepare for disappointment. Where Brazil captured the nightmare of bureaucratic oppression and 12 Monkeys tackled themes of time, memory and morality in an inventive emotional narrative, the Zero Theorem virtually comes in on a stretcher, trying to stand alongside them. Links to my reviews of these movies will be at the end. What should have been the final piece of a brilliant dystopian puzzle instead feels like a hasty afterthought. Rather than expanding on Gilliam's dystopian vision, it muddies the waters with a half-baked nihilistic philosophy, incoherent narrative threads, and visuals that scream, "Look at me!" instead of serving the story. It attempts to make grand statements about life only to fall flat, like a soapbox that collapses under its own weight. Where Brazil and 12 Monkeys left viewers questioning their place in the world, the Zero Theorem merely leaves them questioning their decision to watch it. For a film that was supposed to complete a dystopian trilogy, it fails spectacularly, offering nothing but confusion and the unsatisfying conclusion that maybe, just maybe, some things are better left unsaid, or in this case, unfilmed.